What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, a situation arose where another game is skipping the Xbox platform, or at least indefinitely delaying their release, and it's not necessarily for many of the reasons that have been outlined before. No. This we found out when the developers started just blasting Microsoft with the reason that, has us once again wondering what is going on at Xbox. We'll go over that, though, here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony's big upcoming release because, go figure, it's leaked all over the internet, but we did also have some comments from the developers behind the game, maybe for some future plans of Astro. And then we'll also be going over more layoffs in the games industry. What else is new? Well, these appear to have hit a very storied studio that many of us, I'm sure, have very fond memories of. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with Tony Hawk Pro Skater, which I really liked. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, the HD release that they did. But afterwards, Vicarious Visions, who again I thought put out a high quality offering there, ended up just becoming part of Blizzard, and that was kind of it. Well, we're coming up on the 25th anniversary of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. In fact, looks like there's an update here that got the internet talking because we can see Wario64 posting it up with them changing for that 25th anniversary across their social media accounts. And now people are wondering, okay, hold on. Does this mean that we're going to see some sort of new release, maybe in the Tony Hawk Pro Skater franchise? There were rumors, I believe like 10 months or so, and these were put out there, I think, by Special Nick over at Xbox Era, that Microsoft wanted to get Tony Hawk Pro Skater back on track as soon as they were able to take over Activision Blizzard right with that acquisition. So I'd like to think that Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 are back on the table because that seemed like the next logical step. Although, Underground, that's an entire series they can explore there too. Maybe they even just do a brand new Tony Hawk Pro Skater with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 6. Hard to say, but if I had to take a guess, 3 and 4, that seems like the next logical release, but we'll see if they do anything at all. Also, we had a bit of a surprising update here. This from the team behind Visions of Mana that released last week, and it's not necessarily what people were expecting to see because it looks like that studio is all but shut down just about at this point. This was reported by Bloomberg, where they say NetEase has cut all but a handful of jobs at its Uka studio in Tokyo, according to people familiar with the matter. It intends to shut down the Shibuya outlet, which had opened with much fanfare in 2020, with the big push obviously being their investment outside of China, that being NetEase, but it seems like they haven't necessarily made the kind of money they were expecting to back starting in 2020 to now, so it seems like they pushed Visions of Mana out the door. I mean, it's a full release and the game works, and it's depending on how your view is necessarily of, I guess, these action RPGs, it's okay, but looking at this, it seems that maybe them looking back domestically at China with what we're seeing at Black Myth Wukong might be where they're moving some of their money, at least according to Bloomberg and some of their speculation. But very unfortunate, you put out a game, and as it's releasing, your studio is basically being shut down. I mean, they planned it probably, I'm sure, a while ago, so hopefully the developers there are able to find new work, because that is kind of wild to celebrate your release and then realize you yourself are, well, being released. Oh, and we did have a small update here for NDCube. That is the studio behind Mario Party, being obviously the biggest one there, as well as Clubhouse Games with Nintendo. And what we can see, they've now changed their name with their logo here. Yeah, it's just Nintendo Cube. They did put the announcement out, made it official, saying we are pleased to announce that our company name has been changed as follows, effective September 1st, 2024. As of September 1st, 2024, our company name will be changed as follows. Company name after change in English, Nintendo Cube. So there you go. I mean, not much else other than that. Even the logo is pretty basic, but I feel like people look at things like Mario Party, especially since that is geared towards the mainstream, and most don't even know who's necessarily developing the thing. They just know that it's a lot of fun to play with friends, right? So in this case, okay, Nintendo Cube, they own, I believe, like 99% of NDCube at this time, so they decided to change the name up and put Nintendo right there in that title. So there you go, Nintendo Cube going forward. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with another game that is, at least for now, skipping Xbox platforms, at least for their initial launch, whereas previously it was planned to release across the board PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. But it seems like there have been some issues in development, but not necessarily how people speculate on these things and immediately react to, where you see them say, oh yeah, we're having issues with the Xbox version of the game. Most people think, oh, well, it's the Xbox Series S that's the problem. And I mean, we've seen this before, so it makes sense why that is the immediate reasoning for, say, a game to be delayed specifically on Xbox platforms, after what we saw with Baldur's Gate 3 that was made very, very public as to what the problem was. Well, in this case, it has to do with Microsoft and their communication. This we can see those started things off posted up over on an update with their website, where they say, unfortunately, at this time, we have to announce an indefinite delay of the Xbox version. We understand how disappointing this news is to the Xbox community. Unfortunately, despite our best efforts and the hard work of our dedicated team, we've encountered challenges that have delayed our release on the Xbox platform. We want to emphasize that this is not a decision we've made lightly. Now, this game is called Enotria, and I've seen it here and there, but I didn't necessarily really keep an eye on it or anything, and it certainly made waves now after all of this going down. But basically, it's a Souls-like game that follows Italian folklore. So at least in that instance, it's kind of unique there with the lore that it's pulling from. So that's kind of cool. But in this case, they were kind of vague as to what the issue was, just that it's not going to be there at release. And at this time, it's just indefinitely delayed. Well, Windows Central did manage to look into their Discord, where the CEO for the studio here had some certain words for Microsoft, where they say, you can ask Xbox why they haven't answered us for 2 months. Obviously, they don't care about Enotria, and they don't care about you. The context is open a store page and submission. We have Xbox Series X and S version ready to go, but we can't proceed with submission and release. I spent a lot of money for porting, and they decided to ignore us. And in fact, they decided to go back and update this a bit more over on Twitter X, where they replied to their initial post saying, we believe that Xbox is blessed with a huge gaming community, and we would love to release Enotria on your platform as fast as possible, as we spent a lot of money and resources to make it happen, but this task is nearly impossible with Microsoft taking months to reply to us when we have the game ready for submission. If you'd like to help, please let Xbox know about our situation. If we had a dedicated Xbox account manager help us out, this issue would not exist. Thank you very much. I'm not really sure what's going on at Microsoft right now, because that sounds like basic stuff. Like they're basically saying, hey, we have all the hard stuff figured out, which they did have to develop and port this thing to not only the Series X, but the Series S, which, as we know, does take quite a bit in terms of optimization. I believe for Dune Awakening right now, there was actually an interview and some quotes put out there that the team behind that mentioned, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a challenge to get it on the Series S. So even something like Enotria, yes, there is a lot of extra work that goes into the 2 SKUs that Microsoft has provided to consumers, and the fact that the Xbox Series S seemingly makes up about half of the Xbox Series install size. It's hard to just say, no, we're not going to create for that, right? And obviously we see Microsoft having this parity clause for the most part that they decided to make an exception for with Baldur's Gate 3 and Split Screen. But if they're not even setting up apparently store pages or responding to them just to get this game set up so they can sell it on the platform, it does make you wonder more and more about games that we don't hear about this for, and maybe they just go, you know what, we're not even going to bother with Xbox, because we've heard these stories, say, at GDC, Game Developer Conference. We talked to other developers, and they've had these issues, and it's like, we're not even really gonna bother. It just feels like at that point, if you're not in Game Pass, say, as an indie developer, how much does Microsoft necessarily care? What kind of priority are you really then for them? Which, again, just seems very, very strange, even though this isn't like that. Like it's not this explosive title. It's not as we see with other games like Black Myth Wukong that just explode on the scene, 10 million sold. The idea is to continue to provide variety and just selections for your consumer base, and in this case, Microsoft is failing quite heavily at some of the basic stuff. In this case, I feel like Microsoft will probably fix this because it has been made public and it has been making the rounds quite a bit. But I would like to hear more and more about the back end here and as to how this exactly happened, because Microsoft did sort of set the standard back in the day with the Xbox 360 to have a digital storefront attached to your console. That was like their big thing, right? That they really worked to bring to like the gaming console scene. So it just feels weird that they're falling on their face with the basics here. So maybe an explanation, or maybe just none at all to the vast majority of us, the consumers, but they're able to work better with developers. But it just seems very, very strange. Everything going on with Microsoft right now, seems like something that might set up for a big report down the road from Windows Central or Tom Warren or somebody. So I guess maybe we'll get more information at that point. But for now, we'll keep an eye on Enotria because they've been very transparent, and maybe they can tell us if Microsoft reaches out and works to fix this. Next up, let's talk about more layoffs, of course, in the gaming industry, which is something we have seen quite a bit over the last, 18 months or so. And in this case, it is affecting Rocksteady, which probably isn't very surprising after what happened with Suicide Squad. Usually you don't celebrate a release like that because they've made it very, very apparent, WB, that did not meet expectations. Go figure, we all kind of know that just looking from the outside in. But we can see this report from Eurogamer, where they say the company's QA department has seen its size almost cut in half over the past month. Eurogamer understands from 33 team members to 15, with poor sales of Suicide Squad directly cited as a reason for its restructuring. There has also been an acknowledgement by Rocksteady senior management that product quality will now suffer as a result, staff say, which, yeah, I mean, quality assurance gets cut in half. That team, yeah, your product quality will most likely go down at that point. But they'll say staff members affected by the job cuts include numerous junior staff, but also several team members employed at Rocksteady for more than 5 years, which does make me wonder about just it's pretty clear they missed quite heavily with Suicide Squad. Like, that's not a secret. So you also wonder about some of the people who initially worked on Suicide Squad at a more senior level and worked to craft and mold that game and got it to the finish line. I just don't think Rocksteady is they're not a live service studio. I feel like that's very obvious now. So I don't think Rocksteady's going away necessarily. They're just clearly cutting down after what happened with Suicide Squad and them having to rehire and, kind of shuffle the deck, which sounds crazy because it is the actual people in there working on this stuff, but that's how WB and a lot of these big companies look at things. So now it seems like they are moving on to a new project, which people have started to notice, like LinkedIn posts like this one, for example. This was pointed out by Tim over on Twitter X, with one senior systems programmer at Rocksteady mentioning an unannounced project starting June 2024 and apparently current now. Okay, they're part of the tech team. And I mean, the obvious thing is go back to the Arkham universe, the Arkhamverse, and continue working there. But also, they could probably go off and do something with Superman. Or really, the benefit to Rocksteady is, sure, Suicide Squad missed, but they can most likely recover if they look around and go, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's go back to our roots, what we're good at with these single-player narrative sort of experiences, right? And we grab an IP that is already popular. So they don't necessarily have to develop something from the ground up then, and that is obviously an advantage for them. So sure, it'd be really neat if they said, you know what, let's do something with Superman and move on from there. Or maybe they want to get a bit more creative in Green Lantern or The Flash, or who knows. There's a lot of things, again, they can pull from, but it seems like based on how long it took them to make Suicide Squad, it's going to be a long time before we hear from them again. Remember, that was like 8 years. So even if we're generous and say, okay, not the live service multiplayer stuff, still 5 or 6 years. So, I mean, I'm looking at this like, okay, they're starting development right now for the PlayStation 6 and whatever Microsoft calls their next system. And I guess then we'll see if Rocksteady can turn things around and recover after the disaster that was Suicide Squad. Next up, let's talk about Astrobot, which we should see reviews going up here in the next couple of days, just ahead of its Friday release. I'm very excited for this game. I think it looks like a ton of fun. And in fact, people are already getting a hold of the game and just streaming it online. Some person actually streamed for quite a while, a little over an hour over on Kick, and they were kicked off, and then they came back, and I feel like this is something that Sony is keeping an eye on, obviously, because there are copies now, it seems, out in the wild early, as there are other spoilers that are popping up online. And to a degree, Sony themselves, with their own social media accounts, have kind of been spoiling some of the cameos. I mean, they just keep showing them off here and there, and it's like, well, that would have been fun to discover for myself. So yes, Astrobot spoilers are out there. Be wary of this. And I know some people initially were like, okay, what's really going to get spoiled? but there's like 150 some odd cameos in the game, and those could be really, really fun, of course, based on which intellectual properties or game series you're like big fans of, or you're really excited to see represented here. There were some, I'll say this, some surprising, even secondary characters that have sort of leaked out there already, so I am anticipating a bunch of different surprises for it. But since it is going to the PlayStation 5 and what we're kind of seeing Sony's initiative now, there have been questions around maybe a PC version of Astrobot, which we can see this post up over on VGC. And this is from MinMax with the host Ben Hansen, who was actually talking to creative director with Team Asobi. When asked about the VR version, though, first off, they say no chance. It's designed for a different medium, which, yeah, you'd have to build it from the ground up for the most part for it to accommodate VR and all of the extra bells and whistles and things you have to account for with that one. So I don't necessarily mind that as much, because the other thing would be a PC version, which I think that would be a better outlet for them, since they would just make more money and reach more people. And they say, well, we want to hear from you. Absolutely, we want to hear from you. So I guess they're asking fans, would you like to see a PC version of Astrobot? And for me, I think the biggest thing right now for Astro is to have that breakout moment. And I think it is set up nicely here, provided the reviews, we'll say, are good. Like, I'm anticipating, if I had to take a guess for a review score, 87, 88. That's where I'm kind of placing it. If it breaks into the 90s, I will be incredibly happy for Astro, because I think this is a mascot that, while they've been around since like the beginning of the PS4, I think there's a ton of room still for them to grow, really break into the mainstream, and even going to PC, just finding more players there to continue growing that brand could set us up for some awesome 3D platforming in the future, and them having more creative endeavors outside of, yes, I know they do very good work with their narrative single player, more mature experiences, but Astrobot is that nice like contrast to all of that, and it's just a lot of fun. So yeah, I would like to see them expand further with the Astrobot IP, and here's hoping, first stop with September 6th when it releases, it comes out and does very well, not only with reviews, but with sales. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a bit of a surprising and also interesting departure from Capcom. We can see this posted up over on their official account on Twitter X. And this is from Hideaki Itsuno. Says, I have an announcement for all my followers. At the end of August 2024, I will be leaving Capcom after 30 years and 5 months. Thank you for your long-term support of the games and characters I have been responsible for. I hope you will continue to support Capcom's games and characters. From September, I will start developing a new game in a new environment. I hope to create fun, beautiful games that are as memorable as, or even more memorable than, the ones I have created so far. Please stay tuned for my next creation. I'm curious if they are going to be announcing it as soon as they are there and working, or if they're going to wait until maybe their new project is closer to being shown and then they just appear on stage at this company. But if you look back on their history, I mean, they mentioned 30 years and 4 months. They were working as a planner back in 1994 with Quiz and Dragons, Capcom quiz show, but they were quickly upgraded, we'll say, to things like Street Fighter Alpha, Star Gladiator, Rival Schools, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Power Stone 1, Power Stone 2. I mean, the list goes on of the number of games they've been involved with at Capcom that have really, at this point, put them over the top, and they are in a significantly better place than they were just, a few years ago, really. But even back when they were starting out, there's a lot of really cool stuff Capcom was doing, especially in like that mid to late 90s, and then the 2000s, that were really, really impressive. And they were big with Devil May Cry, right? Dragon's Dogma, with the most recent one, of course, being Dragon's Dogma 2. So it is interesting to see how much they've done here with Capcom, how attached they are to Capcom. Now they're moving on to something completely different. It does make me wonder if they're just going off and creating their own studio, or maybe working with like colleagues and going off to create their own studio. It's hard to say there, because it would be strange for them to go from Capcom, say, to Bandai, just jumping back and forth between them after being with Capcom and seemingly loyal for more than 30 years now. There must be some really interesting opportunity that was in front of them that they really wanted to do, seemingly before they're, I would say, retired from games completely, because 30 years, you start to get there in age, you start to realize, oh, okay, I don't have many more of these games in me since they take so long to develop. So we'll keep an eye on Hideaki Itsuno to see where he pops up again, and I'm hoping that he at least lets us know if he's formed a new studio to see what kind of name they came up with and really who to keep eyes on here to see what they have. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, what was your favorite numbered Tony Hawk Pro Skater game? Look at that, 2 clearly out in front, and I agree with that too. The jump from 1 to 2 was incredible. It was massive, and it didn't need to rely on a generational leap in order to do that. So that's one of the reasons to me that's so impressive. 3, though, I mean, going from 2 to 3 was a generational leap, and you could feel it, you could see it. 3 was awesome as well. I just did the numbers ones. People, actually, I'm a little surprised. I'm sorry, 2% voted for Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5. That is amazing. But I left off Underground and stuff. One, I get 5 options, and I realized, okay, there's 5 Tony Hawk Pro Skater games I can drop here. So maybe I can do some of the offshoot ones if we do get some big announcement for Tony Hawk Pro Skater with their 25th anniversary, which I am absolutely crossing my fingers hoping for. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from The Internet is Dead to Me, who left a comment on the internet, okay, saying with the Switch 2 on the horizon, you're gonna have to start gearing the channel up for Switch 3 leaks soon, which has the Switch 2 Pro disrespect in this comment. Now, I think when the Switch 2 finally gets revealed, there's the big trailer, we see some of the games, some of the visuals, some of the new features, there will be I think a sigh of relief across the entire gaming sphere at this point, because it's been building up for so long, I mean, really just years, that I think at that point we will be just set on the Switch 2, whatever they call it, and that'll be fine, and we'll see a bunch of really big first-party Nintendo games, and then a year or two later, I'm sure, yes, we will start talking about the Switch 2 Pro, or as you mentioned here, the Switch 3, but there will at least be, I think, 2 years, we'll say, of a grace period here before we move on to that. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll have linked up here in a card, or maybe you want to hear about some of the sales numbers that were revealed to us for Concord, which, well, it's not looking very good. I'll have that linked right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.